All right, welcome back to Genius. All right, so let's take a look at the multidimensional array. This is where we'll talk about nested arrays, arrays that have other arrays as elements. Normally we have arrays that can contain numbers, maybe ages of your students, ages of your friends, scores of your students. Right? It can also contain items like fruits. It can also contain the list of items you want to buy in the market, something like that. So in this scenario, those elements now, instead of just being a single value like a string or a number, they are going to be arrays. Okay, so this is an array that contains other arrays as elements. So in JavaScript, an array, a multidimensional array is an array that contains other arrays as elements. It contains other arrays as elements. Now, this allows you to represent data in multiple dimensions, all right, such as grid, matrices, or nested structures, okay? Multidimensional arrays are a powerful tool, all right, for handling complex data structures in JavaScript. So when you have complex data structures and data containing data, objects, and stuff like that, you can actually use multidimensional arrays to actually sort it out. So they enable efficient storage and retrieval of hierarchical or tabular data. When some data you have the data is having some children, like that, it can be hard to work with without arrays. So with this multidimensional arrays, it is very, very easy to work with it, okay? So let's take a look at how do you create a multidimensional array. Now, the simplest is the 2D array, an array that just contain other simple arrays. All right, so those content arrays do not contain other arrays. So if you look at this matrix now, this matrix, the elements of this matrix array are arrays, but they are just simple arrays. They don't contain any other arrays. So, and when you run this, console.log matrix. Now, the first index, the first bracket here, square bracket here, would get the first array. And then since we are returning an array, this is like more of a chaining something. So this is the first row and the first column. So we get these are the rows. All right, these are the rows. Then these are the columns. Okay. So you can also you want to get the second row and you want to get the third column. So now, ladies and gentlemen, there is a new development on our platform. We have just successfully added a code editor. So you don't need to be going to Replit anymore. So you'll be writing your code right here on the platform. So this is the first time I'm going to be using it to make a class. So let's go and make this example. Let's go and see how it works. So I'll go to my browser, and of course, this is our website. All right, this is our website, but I'm running it locally. Okay, so now I have to change from Python to JavaScript. All right, I have to change from Python to JavaScript. All right, so and I'm going to delete all these guys. Okay, so we want to create the first array. Let me just call it ARR is equal to, you can actually increase the font. You can increase the font when you start using this. You can actually increase the font. So we have array is equal to, okay, so this is an array, all right? This is an array. Then this array contains other arrays. This is the first array, this is the second array, and this is the third array. And these arrays on their own contain 1, 2, 3, okay? Then the second array contains 4, 5, 4, 5, 6. Then the third array, the third element contains 7, 8, 9. Okay, so if we go on now to run this code or to console this, okay, maybe I should just reduce the font so that we have, I believe you guys can see it. Okay. Okay, so if I go on now to console.log, I want to log the array variable that we have here. If I go on now and run, if I click on run code, the output will be here. So if I run code here, this is the output. It's actually loading. Okay. See, we have gotten, this is a nested array, the first array, comma, the second array. So you can see that this is an array that has arrays as elements. Now, if you want to access this first element, of course, you know now we do it by using the first index. This is how you get the first, this is how you access the first element. So if I run this code now, I'm going to get the first element. Do you understand? I got the first element. But the thing is that this first element is also returning an array. So I can actually chain it. I can now say, okay, I get the first row, that's the first element, which is an array. And I want to look for the first item in this array that I got. So I'll still go with this. So of course, you would expect that I will get 1. So when I run this, I'm going to get 1. All right, I believe you get it. Okay, because let me make it clearer. I could say constant array. I can say element 1, all right, is equal to array this. Okay, so I can also come back since I have this, what I'm returning is also an array. I can also say element 1, 1, all right, is equal to element 1, and I'm getting, so you can see I'm having access to this because the first one, all right, the first one, if I run this now, it will give me an array because the first element of this array is an array. Then I'm now going, okay, since I have gotten that array, the first element, which is an array, I want to get the first item. So you can actually play around with this thing, okay? So this is the same thing that I have just done here. Instead of writing these two lines of code, that's what I have just done here. I'm getting the first element to be an array, and I'm chaining it. I'm chaining it because I'm also calling this square bracket thing, I'm also calling it on the array that is being returned. So this is just exactly the same thing. So in case you get confused, please reach out to us. So with this now, all right, so with this, we can actually access the items. If I want to access the second row, okay, if I want to access the second element, I will go for the index, which is 1. And if I get to that element, which is an array and is the one on index 1, I can say I want to access I want to access the column. Now, these are the rows. The first one is the row, and the first one is the row, and the second one is, okay. Let me make it look simpler, okay? Let me make it simpler. Okay, so you can see this one is the first row. And for every row, we now have columns. Okay, maybe I should just make this thing like this. Okay, so this is the first row. All right, and we now have their columns. So this is the first row. All right, and it has 3 columns. All right, row, column. So the first one that is in the bracket here is for the row. It will get you the row, and the second one will get you the column. Okay, so that's how it works. So if I run this code now, we are actually going to get 6. Okay, so we got C. That's what we got here. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation. Okay, so how do you access elements in a nested array? I've just shown you that. Okay, so to access an element, you use multiple indices. All right. Now, the first index is going to be for the first row, for the row, and the second index is going to be the column. Okay, so when you have a nested array like this, we have apple, banana, carrot, and daikon. I don't know. This is my first time of hearing this. Daikon, okay? So you can see how many rows do we have there? We have 2 rows. The first element there is the row, all right? We have 2 rows, the first one and the second one. We have the first element and the second element. It's like we have 2 items. So we have 2 rows. So when we are talking about multidimensional arrays, the elements is what we call the rows. The elements are what we call the rows. So now for every element, which is the row, there are the items of the row is now what we call columns. Okay, let me put it this way. In a multidimensional array, nested array like this, the items of that nested array, the elements of that nested array is what we call the row. Then for each of the row, the elements of that row is what we call the columns. So you can see here we have apple, banana, okay, in the first row, and the apple and banana are the columns, okay? So if I want to access the first column of the first column of the first row of this nested array, I will get apple, okay? So this is how you get it. Here, we are accessing the first row, which is the first index we have here. We are accessing the first row, because we are looking at index 0, and what is in index 0 is the first row. All right. Then since for the first row, we now want to access the second column. Remember, this is index based too. All right. It's also index based. So what is in index 1, the column that is in index 1 is banana. So that's how you access it. And that's what I have already shown you. Okay. So you want to access the second row, you go for the index 1 and then work with the column that you want to work with. So this is how you access elements in a nested array. How do you iterate through a multi-dimensional array? All right, you can use the for loops. So you use nested loops to traverse a 2D array. All right, so you look at it. We have this array and we can use for loop to do this. But this is actually bogus. But let's go back to code. Let's go back to our website. All right, so let's say these are the, okay, let me just make this so that I will have enough. Oops, sorry. I will have, sorry, let me just get this thing in one line. I have constant array and I have this array. Oh, sorry, I have to equal to array and my semicolon. So I will have the first row 1, 2, 3. I will have the second row 4, 5, 6, and I will have the third row 7, 8, 9. All right, so I have 3 rows here, and for each row, I have three columns. So if I want to loop through them, let's go. Let me show you how to do the traditional for loop. So I'm going to say for let I equal to 0, I less than the length. But instead of me to do this, I will have to get the length out here first. Okay. All right. So I will just say I will say less than array dot length. Array dot length. Okay. And I plus plus. So now this, as I'm looping through now, I'll get to the first element of this array, which is also an array. So I also have to loop through it. So I'll loop again. I will say let j equal to 0. Okay. And j is less than, what am I now looping through? I'm looping through the first element, the first element dot length. I believe you're not getting confused. Then j plus plus. So let me explain the code. I can now just say console.log. I can say console.log array of I of j. So let me run this code and make sure that our code is okay. And if we don't have any errors. Okay. You see, I was able to loop through all of them one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, till 9. Okay. So now let me explain this code. Now, when we get, it's just that I'm so sorry we cannot debug on this our code editor here. We don't have a debugger here, so you can just manage it. Okay. So right now, I can go on and say, for the first iteration, I'll be iterating the first element, which is also an array. So this is the first element. Okay, the first iteration will be iterating the first element, and it's also an array. All right. So since it's also an array, I also want to loop through it. And as I'm looping through it, look at what I'm doing here. I'm saying I'm accessing the I of this array. So if the first iteration I is 0, that means I'm accessing the 0 index of this array, which is the first element. Then I'm getting the length of it. So I want you to go close to this. So after doing this, I am now consoling array of I, array of j. Do whatever you want to do with it. Do you understand? Do whatever you want to do with it. So when I do this, I'm actually printing these things like this. Okay. All right. So now this is it. This is how you loop through it using the for loop, the traditional for loop. If you really understand how for loop works, this should not be it should not be an issue. The first iteration, we are looking at the length. We are saying I less than the length of the array. But the second iteration, we are iterating the elements of this array. So if we want to have access to those elements, we go with the indices. And I will represent 0, 1, 2, or 3, depending on. All right. So that is something we are doing here. But an alternative is to go with the for loop, for each loop. Alternative, we can use the for each loop. Remember that the for each loop takes a method, a function, sorry, it takes a function, a predicate, then you can actually work with that. So let's go to our browser, our website. So instead of using this one, let me use the for each loop. So I will say array dot for each, okay? And I'm going to provide a function. I'm going to provide a function. And of course, this for each would have access to the current value, which is the element. All right. And remember that this element is going to be an array. Okay. So since it is an array, I can also loop through it again. I can now say element dot for each. I would also give it um, another function. I'll also give it a function. And this time around, I could still call it element, but this time around, let me just say item so that we don't confuse ourselves. So I can go on and say console.log. I can now log the item. Okay, so this is the same thing, but you can see we have written less code and it is easier. The first iteration with the for each loop, we are going to have access to the elements, each of them, the first one, the second one, the third one. Okay, as we are iterating through the array. Then once we get that first element, which is also an array, we'll also loop through it again. Then we now get the item. Now this item we are getting now are their columns. So you can just work with them. I can do this, I can say, okay, I can say, I can do this. I can say row. I can say row, and I will say the row here is this element, and I will say column, and this column is going to be the item. Okay, so if I print this thing out, it's going to make sense. So we would have something. You can see how we printed them out. Okay. Oops. Row 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. This is not exactly what I wanted to do, but that is still okay. Okay. All right. So that okay. So what I can do is that instead of printing this one, I can just say the first row, I'll just get their indices like this. So yeah, this will give me a better output. Oops, there's an error. Oh, that is sorry. Okay, I can actually access the index. Okay, so I can actually access the index here. No. Okay, not there. Okay, this is where I can access the index. I can say index, and it gave me an error because I is not defined. Sorry. So I can rerun the code now, and I think we'll get a better output. This is what I wanted. Row 1. Okay. All right. No. Okay, sorry. This is not, I should use this index should be, because I want to have access to the row. So I think this is where I should put it. So this is where I should put it. So when I run, I'm going to get the desired format. Yes, row 1, column 1, row 2, column 2, row 1, column 3. Do you understand? Okay. Yes. Okay. So row 1, the column is 1, 2, 3. Row Oh, okay. Don't worry. Okay, this didn't it's not giving me exactly what I wanted, but it's okay. I'm just letting you know that you can do more with it. So I don't want to waste time on this code, but I'm not getting exactly what I wanted. I could actually work around to sort it out, but it will take us some time. So, but that's not what I want to show you here. But what I'm trying to show you here is that you can have access to all these things. Okay. So this is the row 1. Okay. Mm, okay. All right, no problem, no problem. Let me not go into this, but at least you can see what we can do here. You have access to all these items and you can work with them. Okay, so you can play around with it. I'm just trying to play around with it, but I'm not getting the exact thing I want. So, but it will take me a lot of time to debug it, but let's leave it. Okay. So now this is how to loop through. This is how to iterate through a multidimensional array. Now, how do you modify a multidimensional array? The same way you can access a multidimensional array. Once you have access to it, you can now modify it. So you still use their indices. Okay. You see here we are saying indices 0 and 1. We are changing it to 99. So I can just go back to our website and I will say I want to change um, array, the first item, the first item, the first column. I want to change it, instead of 1, I want to change it to 100. Okay, and if I go on to print this array, you're going to see the changes. Okay, I'll print array, and when I run this code, you see, we have changed it to 100 instead of 1. So all you have to do is to access it the way we used to access using their indices. The first one is the row, the second one is the column. Then you now assign the new value you want to give it. Okay? All right, as simple as that. You can also add a new one. You can use the push method, you can use the splice method, however you want to do it. So you can add a new array. You can add a new element to this array. So I will leave you to do that yourself because I have really explained this thing enough for you. So if you push, okay, let me still do it. All right. Let's say we have 3 elements here. So if you want to push a new one, we want to push to the end, depending on, do you want to push it to the end or the beginning, or do you want to put it in the middle? You can use the push, the on shift, or the splice method. But I'm just going to use push. And what do I want to push? I want to push in 10, 11, 12. So when I run this code now, you're going to we have the new array. You see, we have the 10, 11, 12 element inside of it now. Okay. So you can also add an element inside a row. All right. All you have to do is to get access to that particular row, then you push. I will leave you to do this one yourself. If you can't do it, reach out to me. Try it, and if you can't do it, reach out to me. Okay. So higher dimensional arrays. Okay, we have just been looking at the 2-dimensional array, but arrays can have 3 dimensions and beyond. You can see this one now. The first array, all right. In the first array, the first element is a multidimensional array. The first element, we have an array and we have arrays as elements, and these rows have other arrays inside of them. So these rows, instead of being a normal array, they are multidimensional arrays. So if you have understood to this point, this is not hard to understand. It's not hard to understand. So in case you don't understand, still reach out to me. But this is not hard to understand at all. All right. The first the first index will get the first row. Then the second index will get the nested row, and the last one will get the column. Okay. So how do you flatten a nested array? We saw how to do that with the flat method or the flat map method. All right. So we have already seen it. And with the flat method, if you do not provide the depth, it will flatten it to just one level. I have taught this thing already, and I showed you examples in that session. Okay. And the where you provide the depth, it will flatten it to that depth. But remember, you can also do infinity. Okay, if you don't know the depth, you don't know how deep the thing is, you can use infinity and you flatten it. So what are the practical use cases? Grid-based games. When you're building a grid-based game, you actually, example, tic-tac-toe, all right? You get all these things. Storing table data, rows and columns, processing comma-separated value data or spreadsheet, and tree structures. So there is this exercise I want us to do. All right. Now, I have already done a lot of exercises already as we go on in this class, but I saw this one. I said, no, this could be confusing for you, but let me still do it. Now, somebody should tell me just tell me in your mind, okay, how we want to sum all the elements. How do we do it? Okay. Now, remember, we are using the reduce method to get the sum, right? We're using the reduce method to get the sum. But this time around, this is not an ordinary array. It is a nested array. It is a multidimensional array. So what you will do, first of all, you have to flatten it so that it will be one array. a simple array, an ordinary array, then you can now call the reduce method on it. So you cannot chain it. So let's go on and see what we have here. Let's go to our website. I have this multi-dimensional array and I want to create the sum. So if I go on and say, look at it. If I go on and say array dot flat, all right? Let's assume I do not know the depth, so I can just go with infinity. So if I run this code now, we are going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, we just have 9. So you can see that it is not a simple array. We have flattened it. Okay, so now that we have flattened it, we can now run the reduce method on it. So this is what I will do. I will say constant. I will call it sum, and I will say array dot flat. All right, I'm flattening to infinity. Then whatever I get, I'm still going to get an array. Then I will now call the reduce method. Okay, I will now call the reduce method, and the reduce method takes a function and also the initial value. But remember, if you don't provide the initial value, it's going to be 0. So I provide the initial value, and of course, I will get my accumulator. I will get the item itself. So I can just call it element. Okay. Then what do I want to do with this element? I just want to return. I will return accumulator plus element. Okay, so I believe this is very simple. We have already done this previously. So I will just call the sum value. And when I run this code, we are going to get 45. So what I just did was, first of all, I have to flatten the array. After flattening the array, I now call the reduce method on it. So I'm doing chaining. I chained it because what I got from the flat method will return an array. Then I'm calling the reduce method on that returned array. So I use the accumulator and the element, and this is what I just did. So this is the sum. So in case you want to do the multiplication, of course, you just have to change this plus to multiplication and change this initial value to be 1. You will get the answer, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. In the next chapter, we'll continue with objects. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next chapter. And in case you do not understand something, please always reach out. Please always reach out. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next session.